Jude Warren, welcome to A Breath of Fresh Air. I'm so excited for you because, as many people do not know yet, you've written this amazing book about Boz Scaggs. What's different about this book is that you haven't actually interviewed Boz Scaggs as you did with your last book featuring the history of the band America, but you've done it from your very own perspective. So I want to hear all about it, please.
Well, similarly to my America book, it is a lot of my opinion and analysis of the music. That's my specialty, and that's what I like writing about. So it really does a deep dive into all of the records, that studio albums that Boz put out, like the America book did. It's true he was not interviewed directly for it, but I did get to speak to a lot of his collaborators, which I think makes it exciting. And they come from different eras of his work. So I got to talk to Jim Peterman from the early lineup of the Steve Miller Band, which was really great. The real early days when Boz was just starting out. And then several members of Toto were really wonderful. And four of them are featured in this book. And David Paich was kind enough to write the foreword. And he, as a lot of us know, wrote a lot of the Silk Degrees album.
It's a fabulous read, but I guess my very first question to you is how come Boz didn't want to be interviewed? What did he have to say about that in declining the offer?
He's been a bit reclusive in recent years, I think, just in terms of he's keeps to himself and stuff. And I don't know the precise nature of that, but I write whether the artist, is involved or not. That's because all of my writing is about the records and the music. So it never really goes into the personal lives of artists. So to me, it's not really affected by that too much. As if you read the America book, it's all about their
I
records.
agree. Yeah, right. So what inspired you so much about Boz Scaggs?
Well, I've been a fan of his music for a long time. I like that he was very influenced by the blues, especially when he was first starting out, the older American blues artists, and you can hear that in the early work and his early work with the Steve Miller Band. And then that he gradually kind of went into the dance disco sounds of the 70s gradually in the with the Silk Degrees record, which was his biggest success. But then if you study his whole arc of his career and if you read the book and you take it all the way through, recently in the last couple of years, several years, he did an album trilogy of blues, mostly covers, and it was kind of a full circle journey. So you can see his real love is there still, but yet he had all these offshoots, like working with Duane Allman in the 60s on one of his first American record. So it's just by by writing the book myself, I got to go into talking about different parts of music because Boss has covered so much. Like there's the section about standards when he covered several standards songs for two albums in a row, and I got to go into music history there, which I love writing about.
Yeah, well, I mean, Silk Degrees was Boz's seventh album. He had to wait quite a while for such success anyway.
His body of work speaks for itself, and I think he's doing some more shows this year. He hasn't performed in a while, and put the COVID years in there, and that's a longer stretch still. From the art that I've studied with him, he's very true to himself and just seems to follow his own impulses artistically, which is what part of what I love about his legacy.
Now, I mean, it has to be said, well, you're not a very young girl, but you're a young girl compared to the generation of Boz Scaggs fans and Boz Scaggs himself. What intrigues you about this classic rock music of the day? How'd you get into all that?
I was influenced by my parents growing up, who were big music people and, big fans of pop and rock stuff, starting with the Beatles and the Beach Boys, the classics, and then all these offshoots into different other artists. Why I like it personally and it holds up for me today is I really love a lot of the ideologies that are generally in a lot of 60s music, especially in 70s music. The peace, love, rock and roll thing, which sounds kind of cliche maybe now in today's culture, but I think the intentions of a lot of the love forward and peace forward language in a lot of those songs, I think is the truth. It should should still stand true today, even though perhaps it's not as in vogue. But the that sentiment really stuck with me as a young person, and I like to hold on to that today myself. A lot of the this music I hear on the radio that's newer, some of it's wonderful, but some of it is a bit either like harsh or too self-obsessed in my opinion, lyrics wise. So I tend to gravitate toward this era.
Well, classic rock fans like me, like your parents, like the entire generation of people probably watching this interview, would absolutely agree with what you're saying, that in its day, the 60s, 70s, 80s music was the best that's ever made. It's refreshing to hear a young person actually agree with that point of view. Why Boz in particular?
Well, I always loved the Silk Degrees record, and frankly, I felt, there was a need in the literary marketplace for some discussion about all of his different albums, and I wanted to step up and do that this time
The way
around.
around. And I think there are a lot of people out there who don't know that Boz Scaggs' career perhaps has spanned that many decades. A lot of people only know him for Silk Degrees.
That's a good point too, and that's how when I wrote about America too, I felt so many people were rightfully so familiar with the hits, but there hadn't been so much discussion about those other, deep cuts of these great albums, which I really love a lot of. So that's what I tried to do with this Boz
Right.
book too.
So, with your deep dive into the music of Boz Scaggs, Jude Warren, what's one thing that you could pull out of there and share with our viewers now?
Well, which I like to feel I already knew on some level of, but by really doing a deep dive myself into listening to each track, each album in an intense way, I really like how his music has great commentary about relationships, romantic relationships, and love songs, like many pop rock artists get into anyway. But a lot of his songs are more nuanced. They pick up the nuances of relationships in a subtle way that I really appreciated as a writer and listener.
And when you say you do a deep dive and like really immerse yourself in listening to it, what does that entail?
Um, Me alone listening to the album, reflecting on it, taking notes, connecting it to other musical ideas that I've had going anyway in my mind about other artists or, eras and stuff, and just kind of lacing that into the discussion of the songs. I get into the lyrics a lot, and try to take a wider stance of the narrative view of the song beyond the song itself and the recording process and stuff.
So, how long do you spend doing that? What does putting together a book like this take in terms of time
Um,
and energy?
Well, this one took about a year, I think, with getting that first draft that I was happy with. And then like another year or so of editing and rearranging and stuff.
Right. So David Paich did some of the writing with Boz Scaggs, didn't he? What did he have to say about Boz and the music?
He has a wonderful, opinion and memory of the time he worked with him on Silk Degrees. And David was just starting out at that time, really. So he was in a very excited stage in his career. And I think the meeting of them together artistically was really exciting and wonderful. And Jeff Porcaro kind of brought them together, and the beginning of the book talks about that. And he wrote a wonderful foreword for the beginning to bring readers into it, just with fond memories of that time and appreciation of his and Boz's co-appreciation of each other, I think, and the success that they were able to come up with that record.
And I believe that Boz likes to co-write rather than write on his own, doesn't he?
Yes, it's true. If you look at his most successful work, a lot of it, it's often with a co-writer, and I think that he feels that he works better bouncing off of someone with ideas.
Right.
The book launch in LA next week at Book Soup with David Page is going to be there, and my friend AJ Eaton, the film director who directed the Crosby documentary a couple of years ago, which was really great. He's going to do the moderation, so I know it'll be a fun night. That will be the party.
Wonderful. Jude Vaughan, you're amazing. What an exceptional career you've had today. Love this book and can't wait to see what comes out of you next. Thank you so much for sharing your time today with us.
Thank you so much, Sandy. It's great to be here.